Welcome. Thank you all for joining us today as we kick off our monthly virtual workshop series for the spring with our first virtual workshop of 2024. My name is Drew Scammell, and I'm a program associate with the Inclusive STEM Ecosystems for Equity and Diversity, or IUSE program, at the American Association for the Advancement of Science. On behalf of our AAAS IUSE initiative, I would like to welcome you to today's workshop, Building Effective Communities for Students, Educators, and Everyone in Between. Today's workshop will feature presentations from Dr. Peter C. Cormas and Dr. Cathy Ishikawa. Before we jump into today's workshop, I have a few housekeeping notes. Yep, great. So this presentation is being recorded. The recording will be made available in the coming weeks on our website at AAAS-iuse.org, and the slides are posted and available on the website if you'd like to follow along. You'll also receive an email with a link to the recording when it's available, and that'll take about a week or so. Please note, we will transition into Q&A discussion breakouts following the presentations, and those breakout rooms will allow for deeper engagement and will not be recorded. Additionally, we have closed captioning available for this workshop. You can download and view the full transcript by clicking the CC button at the bottom of your screen. And for those of you who are new to AAAS IUSE, this initiative seeks to support faculty, students, and the greater undergraduate STEM education community by disseminating research and knowledge about STEM teaching, learning, equity, and institutional transformation. We invite you to learn more about the AAAS IUSE initiative on our website and hope you'll join our community as future contributors. You can also follow us on X, or formerly Twitter, at IUSE Program, and LinkedIn to stay up to date on our latest events, blogs, or to share what you've learned at today's workshop. And so with that, we'll shift over to our first presentation of the day. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Peter Cormas, professor at Pennsylvania Western University. So Dr. Cormas, I will pull down my slides and hand it over to you.
There we go. Okay. And great. Hi, everybody. I am Peter Cormas, and I'm here with my colleagues, Louise Nicholson and Kyle Frederick. We are from Penn West University. And we were recently awarded an IUSE grant, and we started a project. And this project is centered on something called learning communities. I know many of you know what learning communities are, but if you don't, it's basically just faculty getting together, talking about their instruction. And the goal of these learning communities generally is student learning. And as many of you know, there's a transformation of undergraduate science instruction to improve student learning of science. And this impetus has created great projects like PD projects, like On the Cutting Edge and the Delta Project. However, there's no framework for PD which has been linked to student learning. And in fact, there's actually very little research in higher education which shows that PD actually does impact student learning. Our research, and we've been looking since 2021, maybe 2020, we've only found 5 studies of PD of instructors which has been shown to improve student learning. And these are the studies, and I'll also show you the link later on from our article, which lists these studies. So we wanted to know before we started our project, what are some causes or what is associated with student learning in professional development? There was little in higher education, those 5 studies. So we also looked at K through 12, and we used all of this information to formulate this theoretical framework. And this is our theoretical framework right here. We actually published it in Bioscience. I have the link in the PowerPoint if you want to get to the article. I think Drew has it as well. So this is what the theoretical framework looks like. And basically what it says is there are these core features which impact instructors, which impact instruction, which therefore impact student learning. And we use this theoretical framework to guide everything from our design to our implementation to our evaluation. So PD resembles a focus group or group therapy. Basically, faculty get together, they talk about their instruction, and it's generally based on issues related to instruction and student learning. Learning communities generally have a facilitator. In this project, we are co-facilitating. So I'm a science educator. I'm in an education department. Louise Nicholson she's a geneticist, and Kyle is a geologist. Kyle Fredericks is a geologist. They're both in the same department. We also have another colleague who isn't here today, and she is in the chemistry department. And we co-facilitate these learning communities. And the problem that we center the learning community on is how do we improve student learning of science? And therefore, how do we retain and increase science majors? So I'm just going to walk through our theoretical framework, but I'm going to talk about how we've been implementing things. So it'll be really practical what I'm talking about, because this is basically our implementation, which we did last year. We're going through our second cohort, so we're still implementing it. But basically, I want to talk to you first about these contextual factors. The first one is instructor characteristics. Our instructors are definitely dedicated to student learning. And the evidence basically is, before we even started this project, all 20 of our higher education science faculty members at Penn West decided that they would join this learning community, which to me is incredible. I've worked at 2 other institutions, and just the devotion to student learning here for the science department is just amazing. In fact, they also teach 4 loads. They're very, very busy people, and they still have time to do this. And that is a characteristic, one of the contextual characteristics of this framework. Another one is the student characteristics. We are a public, teaching-focused, primarily undergraduate institution in rural southwestern PA. We're minimally selective. We have a 98% acceptance rate, and our 4-year grad rate is very low. It's only 33%. We have a high percentage of low SES, that's low socioeconomic students at 42%, and 21% underrepresented minority students. Knowing all this, we avoided the deficit model, saying something's wrong with our students or anything like that. We think of our students come in with all of this rich cultural and cultural background, and they come in with a lot of prior knowledge. So we definitely use this as an advantage. We are part of the Pennsylvania state system, and recently, and this is just another, it was a bit chaotic, but we merged with 2 other universities recently, and that was right at the start of this project, which made things sometimes a little difficult. One thing that is associated with student learning in professional development, or from professional development, are these core features of professional development. So evidence shows that these right here, and I'm assuming all of you can see my cursor, these are associated with improved student learning. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is duration. We have 10 sessions for our learning community, 1 hour each, once a month over an academic year. So in the end, all science faculty have 10 hours of learning community professional development. We also have 3 cohorts going through the program. So our first one just ended, our second one is starting up, and our third one is going to be in 2025. And each have about 6 faculty members. Another aspect, another core feature of professional development is, let me see if I can, actually, I can pointer option, there we go. Another aspect of professional development which we use is this called active learning. These learning communities are driven by the faculty. It isn't a typical, maybe professional development where a facilitator comes in with, his or her hands in their pockets and they just start talking about instruction. Instead, the faculty drive everything. For example, at our last session, I was like looking at the time, I spoke for under a minute because the faculty are so driven to talk about their instruction. Yeah. Next is collective participation. It's driven by faculty needs and what they believe that they need to impact student learning. Anytime there is a faculty member who isn't speaking up, Kyle or Louise or I will say, hey, what are you thinking about this conversation? Because we want everybody involved. This also helps create buy-in. In fact, after many of these sessions, the faculty stayed afterwards to talk to one another. And this buy-in helps them continue coming to sessions. And lastly, there is coherence. Professional development needs to be coherent. The coherence was around the problem we're trying to solve. How do we improve our student learning? And it's really our guardrail. And the one thing we've really discovered is all roads lead to Rome. So as the faculty are talking, this idea keeps coming back of like, how do we improve student learning? Could it be done through instruction, other means? How can we do that? Whoops. Oh, all right. Can I get to the next one when I have this on? All right. There we go. So the next node is the instructor node. So when we're in these learning sessions, it looks very similar to, like I said, group therapy or talk therapy. A lot of it is trying to uncover the faculty members' beliefs about instruction. So one may come in and say, hey, I'm doing something called think, pair, share. Do you think like something that would like that would work? And the facilitators, whether it's like I said, me or Kyle or Louise would say, hey, well, why do you think that would work? Well, how does that, what is think, pair, share? How would that be helpful to improving student learning? What we found is a lot of the faculty, they have these inchoate thoughts about instruction. They've just never been given a platform in which they can talk about these things. So they'll talk about things like think, pair, share, or any of the things that they're using in their classroom. They've probably had these thoughts walking around the halls or coming out of their office, but this is a place for them to actually talk about it and to listen to others. And a lot of the things that are coming out of this is already in them. Another way that we elicit beliefs is we gave them belief instruments, and I'll show you those instruments later. And these instruments basically ask them questions about their beliefs, and then we aggregate that data and bring it to them at the sessions and say, hey, look, this is what everybody is saying about this particular idea. What do all of you think? And that elicits their beliefs. And then what we start to see is their ideas about their instruction start to change. And when that happens, we say to them, okay, let's try it. And I shouldn't just say we, because all of us are doing it. The co-facilitators or the facilitators, and we're all doing it as well. We're trying different things ourselves. So we say to them, go ahead and take a chance and let's try something and try it and see how it works. And then when you come to the next session, tell us how it went. If it works, what we find is they'll try it again. They're like, hey, this think, pair, share thing that we talked about, it really works. But if it doesn't work, they might enter some form of cognitive dissonance and say, like, that's weird. It's worked for other people, but it's not working for me. Maybe I can change it some way. If it's successful, they would have implemented a new type of instruction. If it's not successful, they might just abandon it, which is fine, because this is a place for us to experiment and try different types of instruction. One thing that we've been doing that I personally think has been going very well is we also video some of their lessons. Like if they want to do something like think, pair, share, or any of the different strategies that they're trying or coming up with, they I will come in with just my phone and I'll record like 5 minutes of that particular strategy. And then what I'll do is I'll edit it and bring it back and we'll all watch it together as a learning community. And that person will talk about how they believe it went and what they could change. And that also gives others ideas. They're like, hey, I saw her try that. Maybe I should try doing something like that as well. Oh, and I should mention too, we do know from higher education research that changes in instruction do improve student learning. So that is something that we definitely do know. Unfortunately, a lot of this is not tied to professional development. So that's where the difference is and what I said at the very beginning. All right. And then finally, the most important node is improving student learning. The whole point of all of the stuff we're doing, whether we're investing money or whether we're writing articles, in the end, we want to see if student learning is being improved. Or I shouldn't say improved, but impacted. And we ask them to use evidence to determine if new strategies worked. So what we do is if somebody is using a particular strategy in class, we'll say, well, how do you know that it worked? What is the evidence that you're using? And they might say, well, when I did this particular type of activity, the students were talking to one another and I listened to them and they were all on task. They were talking about geology or whatever the exact concept was that particular day. You could also do it. I know somebody this year has done something called concept maps as pre-tests and post-tests. They've used lots of different forms of evidence to check to see if what they're doing is working or not working. If it's working, they're more likely to continue it, and other people are more likely to adapt it. Like when I see somebody do something and they get the evidence, I'm like, oh, I should try that in my class. Um, if it doesn't change anything, they may be likely to abandon it. Another thing that some of the faculty members have looked at and have anecdotally told me and told us that have changed are some of their grades. Um, we are looking at that as a project as a whole, as part of the study, looking at grades. And we're also asking all faculty members to administer a scientific literacy exam at the beginning and the end of each semester. So in the end, we have, let's see, it's 6 semesters. We'll have 6 semesters of data times 2 instruments, the post and the pre and the post test. So we'll have like 12 data points over 3 years. So what do we have here next? This is Rand Corporation. So we are not experts at evaluation. Instead, we asked some experts to get involved. And we were very lucky to get Rand Corporation to partner with us and to do the evaluation for this project. They are awesome. We could never do this on our own. And we have a qualitative and a quantitative researcher working for us. And they helped us put together this evaluation. And this might look a little confusing to you. I'll go through it quickly, but it's in the bioscience article. And I'll present it in a way that will make sense to you. This is our theoretical framework right here. And when Rand came in, they said, there's different levels of evaluation. And the most important level for you is the student learning outcomes. The interesting thing is the higher the level of evaluation, the more difficult it is to get that data. A lot of research that's done in professional development, unfortunately, only tests at level 1, which is the instructor's reaction. So the instructors say, hey, we like it. Like if we ask the instructors in our project right now, I think a lot of them I know a lot of them said that they liked it because we've looked at the preliminary results. But that doesn't necessarily mean that any type of student learning has taken place. So the way we are measuring student learning is through this instrument that I just mentioned, the scientific literacy instrument named the TOSLs. We're also looking at GPA. But at your institutions, I know some of you are seeking to do a project maybe similar to this. There are different forms of instruments that can be used. Like BCI is a biological concept instrument. One can give pre-tests and post-tests. There's a geological concept instrument, a physics one. There's actually dozens and dozens of them. We list many of them in our paper. Right here is instruction. The way we are measuring instruction, and that's at level 4. The way we're measuring instruction is with something called the COPAS. There's also another one called an RTOP. The COPAS is a quantitative instrument. We have Rand folks coming in, and what they do is they quantify the types of instruction that the science faculty are doing. We have that data as well. That's at level 4. At this level, this is the science faculty's beliefs, attitudes, knowledge, and we are using some instruments called we're using some of these belief instruments, and they're basically just Likert scale instruments that ask, they'll ask different things that deal with their beliefs. So we take that information, and like I said earlier, we can present it to them and we can talk about it in our sessions. And lastly, level 1, and all these levels I should mention are important. Just because there's level 1, 2, and 3 and they're lower levels, that doesn't mean they're not important, but they're just farther and farther away from student learning. But we are measuring these levels by looking at all of the qualitative information that's coming out of the learning sessions. We have 10 hours of learning sessions from our first cohort. And what we are doing is we are transcribing those and then Rand is doing a qualitative analysis of those. And let's see, what do we got next? We don't have a lot of findings because we're in the midst of our project, but we did finish the first year and we were able to get some preliminary findings. And here are just some things that we discovered just from the first year of doing this. One thing is instructors did experiment with different instructional approaches. These are approaches that they haven't used before. And these are things that we as the facilitators have noticed. We've seen them try these different approaches, many of which we hadn't heard of. And yeah, it was great watching them and seeing them do this. The other thing too is not only did they do them, but they believe that the strategies impacted student learning. So that's something else too. Their beliefs, they had different ideas and their beliefs changed when it came to that. They're saying these strategies are working. And things that they did mention is student engagement was higher. Students were more likely to collaborate, and students were more likely to engage in types of problem solving. The learning community also provided a much needed forum to discuss shared challenges and to get a fresh perspective. It really, my anecdotal thought was it really invigorated them, that they enjoyed it. They seemed to really like it. And our evidence for that is cohort A, and this makes us, all of us facilitators, very happy. Cohort A has decided to continue the learning community on their own. So they meet once a month. It has nothing really to do with the original project, but the project is now sustaining on its own. And all we do is, I think we just give them refreshments, which is great. So yeah. And I think I have one more slide if I have time here, Drew. I might have flew through this. Um, yeah, and this is just some reflections, just some personal reflections from this. The one thing we really I feel like we did well is we were well prepared. We really looked at the research. Some PD, I know some PD doesn't really exhaust the research, and I think we did a pretty good job. So it made things much easier later on when we were implementing the project. We also used a diverse set of experts. Everybody, it's really amazing. Our team's pretty amazing. Louise is in a biology department. Kyle is in a geology department. Min is in a chemistry department. I'm a science educator in an education department. We have two others at RAND that are qualitative and quantitative researchers. So we have this diverse set of experts that have these different lenses to help us understand and solve many of the problems that come up all the time. And this would be impossible. This type of research is impossible to do alone. I know in the past, I've done my research by myself for years and years, probably 10 years. And I don't think a project like this, you just cannot do that. Yeah, you just can't do it. It's just so difficult. And it probably wouldn't get very far. The other thing that a big thing that came out of this for me too was I just really love it. It's just a lot of fun. It's really invigorated me. I work a lot, and I know this, I know my science colleagues too. A lot of us often work a lot in isolation and we don't cross-pollinate with other departments. And it's just been so much fun meeting other people, and I just have a blast with it. It's just a lot of fun. And the last thing I would say is if you're tenured, I think if you're not tenured, I think it's hard to do it. Once again, this is just my anecdotal reflection, but I think it's difficult to do this project because sometimes you have to lean into people, whether it's the administration or staff or sometimes even other faculty, which is very rare to be honest. But and I think it's almost preferable to be a full professor because there is a lot of things that you have to do. And yeah, it can make it difficult, I think, if you're not tenured. And that is it. Thanks so much. And I hope you stick around because Louise and Kyle will give you a different perspective because they are actual science faculty in a science department. And I'm sure they'd love to talk to you about their experiences.
Super. Thank you so much, Dr. Cormas. And I'll say that Luis and Kyle will be joining Dr. Cormas in his breakout room after we hear from our next presenter. So with that, I'd like to welcome our next speaker, Dr. Cathy Ishikawa, lecturer in the Biological Studies Department, interim co-director of the Center for Science and Math Success at California State University, Sacramento. So Dr. Ishikawa, right over to you.
Thank you, Drew, and thank you everyone for joining us. I'm excited to share about our project. I want to acknowledge my co-PIs on the project. So our big head PI is Kelly McDonald, and she couldn't be here today. And I also have Linda Zarzana and Julie Fogarty, our co-PIs who are here and will join us in the breakout room. Linda is from the community college, Julie is from the College of Engineering, and then Dr. Enid Gonzalez-Orta is also in biological sciences with me, and she is she's the fifth person on the team. So we have 5 of us. All right, so the SIRIUS project, hold on, I'm gonna move my little Zoom thing. Here's an overview of what I'm going to try to cover in this talk. So it's kind of a lot, and I'm hoping I make it through. So to just explain what SIRIUS II is, I felt like we needed to start with SIRIUS I, which sounds logical, and then talk about why we expanded the project to SIRIUS II. And that'll include our definition of what course-based authentic learning experiences are. So if you saw that title or the abstract and you were wondering, what is that? I'll let you know. Then I want to go into really specifically getting at the title of the workshop, which was Building Community. And so I want to talk about building community and equity, and building community for faculty and for students. And then hopefully I'll have time to get to the and beyond. So beyond the classroom, building community. So the SIRIUS project is centered on the land and waterways in the Sacramento region. And so because of that, I want to acknowledge the tribal lands that the tribes that traditionally and still occupy the land. So the Nisenan people, Maidu, Miwok, and Patwin people. So to start with SIRIUS I, why did they do it? So our motivations for this project, and I should say Kelly and Tom Landerholm were the people that put this together. I was a participant in the SIRIUS I project. It ran from 2014 to 2019. And one of the big motivations was to increase opportunities for undergraduates to engage in research. So there was a lot of research coming out showing that mentored undergraduate research experiences were really high impact, and people who were able to do those experiences were more likely to continue in the major and to go on to graduate school and academia or other professional science. So Kelly looked at students in the biology department and found that there was a lot of interest in doing research. Students wanted to do that. They were interested in it. And faculty were interested in doing it and were doing mentored research with students, but they didn't have enough time or money to support all the students who were interested because, as I'll note in an upcoming slide, we are a state school, so we're a primarily undergraduate institution with some master's programs and just a few graduate students, but the focus is undergraduate education and not fully focusing on research. So unable to get everybody supported in doing undergraduate research. The other issue was that when they looked at who was getting the research opportunities, the demographics reflected kind of traditionally privileged groups. So they were mostly male, mostly white, mostly not first generation, and also mostly higher socioeconomic. And we found that transfer students coming from the community colleges were much less likely to be receiving these opportunities. So the SIRIUS project took the following approach. At the time, course-based undergraduate research was something that was kind of becoming popular. And so Kelly had heard about this and thought this would be really cool to bring research into the classroom. So instead of it being a thing that happens outside for just a few people, let's get it in the classroom so everybody gets to experience it. And Kelly and Tom wanted to ensure that students had multiple opportunities to experience these cures. So they scaffolded the cures throughout the biological sciences curriculum. So introductory courses had cures in them, intermediate courses, and advanced courses. So not everybody, but at least there were some courses within each of those levels where students would experience a cure. They also added environmental studies, geology, and chemistry, and had a couple of faculty from each of those disciplines. And that made it interesting because we started seeing some interdisciplinary work and collaborations happening. For all of this, they decided to use a common theme. So we'd all be doing research projects that were related to the American River. So it could be like in the river, in the water, but also on the land surrounding the water. And we used the faculty learning community approach, like Peter was talking about in the last talk. So had a multi-year faculty learning community. So this resulted in 16 cures or cure modules. So some of the cures expand a whole entire semester. Some of them were just a couple weeks, a smaller module within the course. It impacted over 5,000 students by 2019, all at Sac State. This was all at Sac State still. And the cool thing is that not all of these cures are still in existence. So in as they started out, people have retired or moved on to other positions. Other people have come in. But one thing that's really stuck is that people are still doing cures. And as faculty get interviewed for new positions, that's one of the things that that the hiring committees are looking for. Have you done cures? Are you interested in doing that? And so it's a thing that even if it's not related to the American River, we're seeing more of this incorporation of research into classes. And so we saw this culture change. So really happy with that. But one thing that we realized was that for those introductory courses, people who started at Sac State were getting those experiences, but people who were transferring in from our local community colleges were not necessarily getting to do research in their introductory biology courses or chemistry. So we wanted to address this issue of transfer students, and so thought, let's write a new grant, and also thought, wouldn't it be fun to extend this to other disciplines? So let's just make it bigger. And so this leads us to SIRIUS II. We have created a partnership between Sac State and the Los Rios Community College District. And we've expanded to 10 STEM disciplines total now. And we're again using the community of practice model multi-year. And we've expanded to multiple waterways. So not just the American River, we're looking at other waterways in the region. Just a little bit more about the institutions real quick. As I mentioned, it's Sacramento State is a regional university, master's granting. Los Rios has 4 different colleges: Folsom Lake College, American River College, Cosumnes River College, and Sacramento City College. And both of the institutions are very diverse. We have the Hispanic serving and Asian American, Native American, Pacific Islander serving designations. We have a lot of first generation students, low income students, and students of color. For faculty participating, we have people from biology, chemistry, engineering, environmental studies or natural resources, geography, geology, math and statistics, and physics. We have about 20 faculty from the community college and 20 from the community college district, 20 from Sac State. That number is kind of constantly in flux. So we've had, we started during the pandemic, we've had people move to administrative positions, retire. We've brought a lot of new people on, and we are actually bringing in a whole new college. So another community college that's in our area, Sierra College. So the course-based authentic learning experiences. So this is the big thing that we're trying to help our faculty incorporate into their classes. And this is basically Cures, but expanded. It's like Cures Plus. So it's all of these, the modules that we're incorporating have students applying disciplinary knowledge and processes. So things that professionals in their discipline would be doing. And trying to find a real world problem with unknown outcomes. So instead of a cookbook lab where you know what's supposed to happen, there's some element where the instructor's not exactly sure how this is going to go. So, but we expanded it not only to the traditional, like the hypothesis-driven research that you would use in biology mostly. And so we're expanding it to also, project-based curriculum, design-based things for the engineering, and client-based curricula. So things like, for that, I'm thinking of our geographer, one of our geography professors is having students make databases. So she'll have like another one of the SIRIUS classes will act as the client. So they've got data to manage and they're the client. And then she'll be designing a database management system. Her class, her class will be designing the data management system for the other class's data. So that was SIRIUS in a nutshell. And now I want to move on to the idea of building community. So I'm going to start with how we've worked to build the faculty community and some things that we've done to try and encourage interdisciplinary collaboration among the faculty, as well as just like working together with a shared goal of incorporating ALS into their classroom. So one of the reviewers on our IUSE grant was very helpful because they suggested that we include science of team science, go to the science of team science literature to better equip our faculty to work together as an interdisciplinary group and an interinstitutional group. And so we came up with some activities that involved some reflection and discussion among faculty that would kind of foster disciplinary and institutional humility and kind of a mutual respect for different disciplines and different institutions, and break down some of the possible stereotypes people might have had about, oh, what is it like to teach at a community college or at Sac State? And, or, physicists do it this way and we do it this way. So kind of breaking down some of those stereotypes and encouraging mutual respect and some humility. And so we incorporated those activities in our summer institute. We also have been working throughout to build a shared vision for change. And this includes obviously the incorporating the CALES, but we've also kind of overlain the idea of equitable and inclusive practices in the teaching and trying to make the implementation of the authentic learning experiences as equitable and inclusive as possible. So some of the elements that I think have been really useful for building the community was just giving faculty time to talk to each other. So I think that reflecting what Peter had mentioned, time to interact and brainstorm, time to share what they've done and get feedback on what they've done. And just that alone resulted in some organically formed collaborations between faculty in different disciplines and at different institutions. So that was really cool. And we've also been a little bit more hands-on about encouraging collaborations, trying to, when we hear one person talking about something and we're like, oh, they could connect with this person. So we've done some active connections between faculty, which I think that's helped with the encouraging collaboration. We have some different types of evidence that this community building is working. I want to talk in particular, Ethan Roberts is here. He's one of our graduate students, and he is like working on his thesis, his master's thesis, like right now, probably. No, he's here right now, but he's in the middle of writing his thesis. And he has used social network analysis and faculty interviews to really dig deep into the interactions and the effect that the program has had on faculty. And I also feel like some of the projects that faculty have implemented speak for themselves and show that there has been collaboration among faculty. So this is a sociogram that Ethan built, and this was from the second year. We gave a survey the second year of the project, and basically faculty had a list of all of the participants in the project, and then they could check boxes. Like, so one box was, I've interacted with this person through SIRIUS. Another was, I collaborated with this person through SIRIUS. And this sociogram was made from people checking that I collaborated with somebody as a part of SIRIUS, part of the project. And so I'm showing this, one, just to say, the social network analysis is a really cool thing to do to help analyze your project if you're doing a faculty development project. And people have used it for student classes too. So it's a really cool thing to use, especially if you have a graduate student who knows R and can do these analyses. The other reason I wanted to show it is just it illustrates a couple of the collaborations that developed, as I said, organically, just from throwing faculty together in the same Zoom breakout room. One on the right-hand corner, the one that's all in green, that one is all people from Sacramento State, but it's pretty interdisciplinary. So we have the geologists, engineers, and physicists in this group, and they were looking at physical properties of water. And I'll kind of show what they did in a couple slides. And this cluster over here on the left is the people from a lot of the different colleges. So you can see that it's all different colors. It's not all green. So the different colors are different colleges. And so this one, it was just biology and chemistry, but they were from a lot of different institutions. And so they had cross-institutional collaborations, all kind of centered around water quality. So either the biological or chemical properties of the water. And I've got some examples of that here. Excuse me. There were people looking at wastewater. So there was some biology of the wastewater, or samples of water from rivers around. I think some people brought in tap water samples for the chemical analyses. And Linda Zarzana is one of the faculty at American River College, one of the community colleges. And so in the breakout room, she'll be there if you want to know more about what they did. They measured all kinds of things like dissolved oxygen, pH, and iron using the local water samples from around there. And this one about, so one of the faculty who was doing research with the wastewater ended up taking this to a national meeting and presented, his students got to present at a national meeting. So he was really excited because he loved doing research, but he was at community college, and so hadn't been doing it as much. And this was really exciting for him as well as for his students who got to go present at a national meeting. The physical water characteristics group, this one is, they had a very complex web of things that they were going to do. And at the beginning, they were all going to interact between all of their courses. And it ended up mainly being the physics people had this really cool thing where the advanced instrumentation course the students made instruments to measure temperature, turbidity, and depth in the water. And they sent the turbidity meter over to the introductory course, and the introductory students were able to go measure turbidity, learn some things about light scattering, and also see how physics has an application to environmental issues. And they published this in the American Journal of Physics. So that's Mikkel Jensen and Michael Ray. The geology classes in the engineering course, they were measuring, I think the engineering class did the depth and flow profiling in the river, and the geology class measured sediment size distributions. And they were able to kind of combine all this to look at how look at shear stress along the banks and calculate that, and also think about how the flow and depth was influencing the sediments distribution in the river. So that was another interaction between the classes. Another example. All right, so building community among students. So here's where I want to talk a little bit about the equity and inclusion work. And we can look at it in kind of two different ways. So first of all, just our reason for doing CALES in the first place was to create greater equity and the opportunity for doing real research. So, and also we can look at that as relating to building community, because we're helping integrate students into the research community and making them feel like they're real scientists. And so that's one of the benefits. And also thinking about equity in the way that we implement the CALES. So our equity for CALES. So doing inclusive practices in the way we implement them. So I'll say a little bit of how we've done both of those. One example for how CALES are building community through giving more opportunities for research is we have the SIRIUS STEM conference. And this is an opportunity for students to feel like they're part of the SIRIUS II community, and then also the broader research community, because they get practice doing research presentations. So these are students from the courses where they did these authentic learning experiences, and they can come and present their research, or some people, they came and showed those instruments that they made, so they could just show, this is what we designed. So doing some form of talking about the work that they did with other people. And it's in a low stakes, supportive environment. Everybody's real nice. And so it is a little bit easier than jumping straight into a national meeting. But it's also a good resume builder for them. And for the community college students, it's especially useful because they can go connect with Sac State faculty and students. They can say, oh, maybe I want to go here for finishing up my undergraduate degree. So they get to make those connections. Another way that we have tried to level the playing field for getting the research experience is our graduate student, Eric Panino, who's that person up at the front with his hand raised. He designed some workshops that he gave at the community college and the intro bio class at Sac State that increased the awareness of the variety of research experiences available, which included the cures. So he made sure people knew that they were getting this opportunity through the SIRIUS project, and talked about some of the classes that had cures in them. He also talked about what do you do to go get a undergraduate research experience? When do you do it? How do you talk to faculty about it? How do you email faculty about it? Also, how do you cope with rejection? So talked about that. If the faculty member doesn't have an opening, doesn't have the ability to take them right now, what do you do? And in his surveys and focus groups that he did to evaluate the effect, he found that time is a barrier to mentored research for students. And so that just kind of further emphasized the fact that it's really nice to be able to integrate it into the coursework so that they can get these experiences without having to invest additional time and money to do the outside mentored research. The other thing is that the workshops made the research experiences seem more accessible to students, so they could see, oh, I don't have to have a 4.0 GPA to get this. And, you know, anybody can do this. And I don't have to be almost done with all of my coursework to get involved and start doing the research. So it was really good for that. That was the cultural capital idea, to give them some awareness and make them see that, oh, I can do this. All right, so moving on to the equity for the CALES, one of the things that we have done is in our professional development, we have really, we've done some things to try and make sure that the CALES that faculty implement are done with an awareness of trying to be as inclusive as possible. So we had some Summer Institute activities, which included some scenario discussions. So there's a scenario of here's this student, and then thinking about what barriers might this student be facing because of the way the course was set up. And I have to give credit to the CSU Monterey Bay CURE team. So they came up with these really great scenarios. We also developed kind of what we called the library of, we had a lot of videos and readings that faculty could look at to get ideas for equitable practices they could implement in their classroom. And we had a discussion board assignment where they discussed that. And some topics that came up were interesting, like the safety and inclusion in field courses, incorporating work of diverse scientists. So we had the scientist spotlight project was part of our library. And also just ensuring that CALES don't create added time or access burdens for students. We have also continued in our subsequent meetings, we call it the ALA-Palooza, our annual meeting. Those meetings, we've tried to have a component that talks about equity in some way. So I'm going to talk about the survey questions that we presented to faculty, and also I think I'm going to have to skip the community engaged CALES, but we've done that to try and encourage, give faculty different ideas about things that they might, techniques that they might use, practices they might do. All right, so I think the last thing I'm going to talk about is increasing the inclusivity for students with disabilities. So we're putting these new practices in place, and that we're doing them in the name of equity, but we want to make sure that we're not introducing new barriers. And in particular, this research was looking at barriers for students with disabilities. And to do this, we added some survey questions to the survey that we've been using to assess sense of belonging and science identity. And one of the questions was just about what conditions they could check a box for conditions that they had, and it was in different categories. Not surprisingly, mental health was most common, and then learning conditions were the second most common categories that people checked. We also asked students about, the first time that we asked how might your condition affect your experience in the course. We realized that the way that we asked that was not a way, it was a way that kind of pointed them toward a medical model of disability, thinking about their condition as the barrier. And so we changed the survey because, you know, we realized we're using the wrong we're using a model that was not consistent with how we feel about it. So we wanted to use the social model of disability, which looks at the social structures and systems as the barriers and the problems, not the condition. So we reworded our question to ask more about what features of the course presented barriers to you given your disability. Either way, we found that most people were, most of the barriers that students talked about were not specific to CALES. Some were just general challenges that they had getting through school. Others were specific to lab activities, but not necessarily the CALES. And I'll give you a couple examples. But in some cases, students said that the lab and the CALE activities were actually helped them, especially students who had ADHD. They were like, yeah, I actually love this. And it's much easier for me to work in the lab than listening to a lecture. So some sample quotes. This one is one that was specific to a lab activity. So chronic migraines were starting from being around strong chemicals. So my migraines did get triggered by some dissections, and this kept me from feeling completely able to take my time with the lab. So that was a specific part of the lab's specific activity. This next one, the anxiety of social interactions might prevent me from speaking up, and periods of worse depression might prevent me from being properly motivated to be thorough and consistent in my work. So that was kind of something that was general to all of school, not just the CALES. But it was good to hear that and to know that that's an issue that students are facing. So we presented these quotes and the results, actually by we, I should say, it was Ethan and an undergraduate, Shelby Chandar, presented this to the SIRIUS faculty, and we had some really great discussion about it. Some things that came up were the question of like, well, you know, some of these things that we're doing, you know, it's good for students to have to talk to other people. It's good for them to get up and present in front of a group. Do we have to quit doing that just because it's presenting, you know, it's harder for them than it is for other people? And I would say my answer to that is no, but we can talk about that more. But faculty, it was really neat because we had faculty present who all had different ideas about things that they had done to minimize the effects that maybe say anxiety, minimize the anxiety issue for people who were doing a presentation. So we had a lot of crowdsourced practices in that discussion. But we're still doing that research, and I'm pretty much sure I'm at time. So I'm going to skip to my acknowledgements and thanks for my other SIRIUS PIs and our student and faculty researchers and the participants, all the students and faculty who have participated in the program, and then the National Science Foundation, the Keck Foundation, the C Superb, and Sacramento State have all helped fund the efforts. So thank you so much. Sharing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Ishikawa. We are now going to transition to our breakout sessions for Q&A and further discussions with both the presenters and any of the facilitators they brought along. Breakout rooms are self-assigned and will be organized by speaker, as mentioned. So I'm going to ask my colleague Thomas to go ahead and open the breakout rooms now. You should see a pop-up on your screen allowing you to select a breakout room. And if you do not see that pop-up, you can navigate to the bottom of your screen and select the breakout rooms button and click the room you'd like to enter. They're labeled by speaker name. If you're running an older version of Zoom and don't see the breakout room button, please post in the chat which speaker's room you'd like to enter, and myself or a AAAS colleague will assign you to that room. And we'll call you back to the larger group in about 20 to 25 minutes for some final remarks and to hear about y'all's discussion. So have a productive session, and we'll see you back here in a quick bit. Thanks so much. So it looks like everyone's come back to the main room. I hope everyone had a wonderful discussion, and we're hoping to hear maybe some highlights or some insight from the conversations y'all had in your breakout rooms. So first, I'll hand it over to Dr. Cormas. You wouldn't mind sharing, or one of your facilitators sharing, a sentence or two, or just some things you took away from your conversation?
Sorry, Drew, you cut out for 1 second there. Oh. But I'm sure Louise and Kyle heard it. So if one of them would be okay with responding.
I'll jump in real quick. Mostly, we talked about, well, I think the last question was a really good one about accountability, and it kind of feeds into some of the other things that we talked about with our learning communities. The size of them was really beneficial because it was a smaller group. It made it intimate. It made people comfortable to share. And it also made we kind of, I would even say we maybe initiated some friendships over the course of the year that I was a co-facilitator. So one of the things that we were asked about was, how do you keep people coming back and what is the incentive? And I think making an environment where everyone feels like they have a voice and that everyone is getting something out of it, even if they're not speaking a lot, making sure that they're all getting something out of each and every session, I think is really critical.
Great, thank you. Do Peter, Luis, anything else to add?
No, I mean, I think that was it. We had some great questions. It is challenging to put these together and balance the time, but it is definitely worth the effort. It really is rewarding to get to talk about teaching.
Great, thank you. So now I'll hand it over to Cathy. Any remarks, insights from your conversations? Oh.
I'm muted. Is anybody else from Linda or Ethan or Julie? Do any of you want to take it? I don't want to. Oh, there's Linda. Okay, I'll do it. So we had the first question we had was about how to encourage our new generation, the Gen Z students, to interact with each other and to engage in the activities. And one of the things we have, Ethan is himself a Gen Z student, an older Gen Z student, but still Gen Z. And we were thinking that a lot of it, the relevance idea is very important. So knowing my son, who's a Gen Z college student, and his friends, making sure that they see like why they're doing this and really getting that relevance piece in. And I feel like that's one of the benefits of doing these cures or KALEs is it feels like they're doing something real. And so I feel like that's one way to get them engaged. And then I think, I forget, forgetting them talking to each other. We talked about the building safe environments for students. So really normalizing making mistakes. So making that be a normal part of the learning. And this is what happens when you do science. This is what happens when you learn. When you talk about science, you're gonna make some mistakes and it's okay. And so making it feel very safe to participate and really actively trying to make an environment where students can feel safe participating and talking to each other. And then we had a question about having non-tenure track contingent faculty. And when we have a large proportion of the people teaching the science classes being in that position, and how I think part of it was a question about how can somebody who is in that position make some of these changes and try this when I'm teaching an intro class where there's kind of a set curriculum. And I think we mentioned that one thing is that you can do some small tweaks about like the context in the way that you're presenting just a regular lab that you do, changing the bringing in some of why is this relevant, and maybe getting real water samples instead of just a made up sample. Go out and collect some water samples, have students bring in their own tap water, things like that, where you can just do small tweaks to existing labs and existing curriculum. And then we ended up, we were talking, the last conversation that we didn't really get to was how to convince administrators that the work is important, and also that contingent faculty are important and should be involved in some of these efforts to create lasting change in the STEM courses.
Definitely some big topics, all important, and it's clear from both of y'all that I approach it with such sincerity and care. Great. Well, thank you both. Well, thank you everyone for sharing some feedback from those breakout groups. I'm going to pull up my slides real quick to do some final closing remarks. Hopefully that'll come right up. But while that's happening, I would just like to thank our speakers and facilitators, the rest of the AAAS IUSE team, and all of you who were able to join and participate in our workshop today. It was a really, really great one to kick off our spring series. We have a survey link, which we are posting in the chat and sending via email. The survey should only take a few minutes, and we would really appreciate your feedback. Additionally, a recording of the presentation will be posted on our website, emailed to you in the coming days. Once again, thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope to see you at next month's workshop on Thursday, April 18. As always, we look forward to engaging with you and learning from you, our AAAS IUSE community. Take care, and thanks again.